You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Today's episode will be a day of remembrance in honor and remembering my cousin Bill Butler Jr. And also honoring his legacy. Before we get started, I would just like to give a moment of silence for our loss and for his sacrifice. Today is June 27th, a date that carries deep meaning for everyone who knew Bill and loved Bill. It's the anniversary of his end of watch. And while we feel the weight of that loss, we also stand in the light of the legacy that he left behind. So this episode is remembering Bill, reflecting on why we started this podcast, and sharing what we want the world to know about the man behind the badge. If you followed us for a while, you may already know Bill's name. But for anyone just tuning in for the first time, let me introduce you to the heart behind the mission. Bill Butler was a sheriff's deputy, but more than that, he was a servant leader, a devoted husband and a father, a man of principle, and someone who made you feel safe just by showing up and being there. He lived with strength and humility, and he carried his badge with honor every single day. Bill was not the type of guy that would just run away from danger. He would run towards it because that's what people needed him to do. So we launched this podcast because of people like Bill. The day we lost him changed everything. It reminds us just how fragile life is and how important it is to remember those who gave everything. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice exist to honor the fallen heroes, to share their stories, and to spotlight the families and fellow first responders who carry their memory forward. Bill Butler was just the spark behind the mission. This show is our way of keeping his spirit and his voice alive. He believed in the kind of courage that doesn't need recognition, the kind of service that speaks through actions, not words. And we're here today because that belief still burns bright. So what should everybody know about Bill? He was someone who saw the job not just as enforcement, but as protection, as presence, as promise. He made people feel seen. He followed through. He took the time to laugh, listen, and to show up for people he loved. His faith guided his service, and his strength uplifted those around him, even in silence. Bill wasn't just a hero because of the ultimate sacrifice he gave. He was a hero because of how he lived. I have a few clips here that I would like to share. The first clip will be of Sheriff Hodshire, and he will be speaking about the day of the incident briefly, and the kind of person that my cousin Billy was with his law enforcement family, just to kind of showcase the kind of man that he was in the community.
So yesterday, June 27th, 2024, approximately 14:30 hours, Deputy Butler was shot. Deputy William Henry Butler Jr., he's 51 years of age, was shot during a traffic stop in Jefferson Township in the county of Hillsdale. Deputy Butler was a backup unit for my detective sergeant on this traffic stop. Our detective sergeant was driving past a vehicle, saw the driver of the vehicle, and knew that driver had warrants for his arrest. He's a frequent flyer for the gentleman that was driving the vehicle. And we'll leave his name out of it. Once we did a traffic stop on that vehicle, we knew that the driver had the warrant, so we went ahead and placed him into custody. The passenger would not give up any information. My detective was calling Central Dispatch and trying to get information on this guy. Finally, my detective learned who he was. And then, in the meantime, Deputy Butler was listening to the radio transmission and decided he was going to go back him up. So that's exactly what he did. And there will be a funeral. I don't know the date yet, but it's going to be huge. It's going to be the biggest funeral, according to the SMART team that came in to talk to us about it. They said, you've never seen anything that you're about to see in the next week. So we're setting him out with honors. He deserves that. He was a great deputy and a great friend. Another deputy of mine would work out at 5 o'clock in the morning, do their workout, eat their protein, and come to work at 6. They'd work till 6 p.m. So they've known each other for about a year, but they were super tight, physically fit men. Like I said, was just a well-liked guy. Never had any disagreements with anybody that works here. Everybody loved to talk to him, cut up a few jokes or whatever. As a matter of fact, I just talked to him the day he was killed. I'm running for sheriff again this term, and he's on my campaign. So him and his kids were out campaigning with me in parades and stuff. We were just talking about the July 3rd celebration, about him using his 6-seater golf cart, and his kids were going to be handing out my literature. That's the type of relationship we have.
Just a few words from his former sheriff, Sheriff Hodshire. Obviously, he was very close with the sheriff. Bill grew up in this town. He was raised in this town. He was not born in Hillsdale. He was born in Oakland, California. However, he was raised as a young boy in Hillsdale, Michigan. So obviously he knew everybody. He went to school there from grade school all the way up to high school. So he pretty much knew everybody. That was the kind of guy he was. He didn't keep to himself. He was a very social person. He loved everybody. He talked to everybody. He got to know people for who they were. And it's just an honor to have such a blessing in our life that we've had with Bill. I wish we would have more time with Bill. Unfortunately, that time has passed. But however, through that, the silver lining is this podcast lives because of Bill. He was the catalyst for this podcast. We're going to continue with this podcast and kind of roll with the podcast and continue to help people, because without his sacrifice, we would not have been able to help so many people like we have been. I definitely give love and thanks to Bill. Always will. I looked up to him, for everything that he's done. He was so kind and generous. Even as kids, he was always good to me. I just wish we'd had more time with him. Next, we have clips from Sarah Butler, his wife. She has a couple of things that we had saved from our previous episode from her broadcast. So I will play those clips right now.
Bill was very calm in the household. We had been married 13 years, and so he brought this calming presence about him. Very spontaneous and like laughed like things, but he was just always very chill. We always made fun of him because he had hearing aids and he couldn't hear anything. And whenever he didn't hear the kids, he would just like hear them down. So we always laughed about that, but he was always so calm. And when he was on duty, I work at the sheriff's department as well. So it was always, like, are you even working? Like, what are you doing? But he always had the biggest smile on his face for any time that he was on duty. He just loved it. He would stop into the house often, because we live pretty close to town. He would stop in and, grab what to eat or get something to drink. And so it was always nice to see him on security cameras, like, oh, Bill's home, he's coming to get something. And so he was, very calm, and when he's on duty, just all in all the time. He was just laughing and joking, but would be very serious when he needed to be, and all of the inmates had tons of respect for him just because he was always so fair and honest. Bill would spoil those children and get them things, and I would just shake my head and say, I don't need that. And not, what would Bill do? Like, I need a bracelet. You remember the WWJD? What would Jesus do? I need like a WWBVD. Like, what would Bill Butler do? That's what he needed. So I spoiled him insanely, or, those are the things, is trying to navigate little stuff like that.
So this is a testament from his wife, exactly how Bill was. He obviously loved his job in law enforcement. He didn't have to work that job. He was a realtor. He had a retirement from the military. He was always active, but he loved law enforcement. He loved what he did. And talking about his fairness and honesty with the inmates in the jail, a family member had told me a story about, and this came up in the funeral as well. But to tell you this story about how and who Bill was, there was a time when there were budget cuts and budget issues with jail, and the inmates weren't going to get a Thanksgiving meal, so they were just going to kind of get the, regular run of the meal type of meal. My cousin, the kind of person he was, showed the most generosity and kindness and loving careness for the inmates, and went out and bought with his own money Thanksgiving dinner for all of the inmates in that county jail. Just to kind of give them a semblance of normalcy. Just to kind of show love and compassion for them. He knew that they were there for a reason, but they didn't have to be treated like animals. That's the kind of person that he was. I know some people may have mixed issues about that, but I was one of those guys that made a mistake. I was in jail. I did my time, and I came out on the other end a better person. And it was because of, officers like my cousin, Bill Butler. There was guys in there that understood that there were some of us that just made mistakes, and we deserved a better life, and gave us the encouragement to move on and to become better people, and not to continue with that behavior and we didn't have to live that kind of lifestyle. So that just goes to show you, just a little bit of kindness goes a long ways. Next up is a clip of my cousin Christy, Bill's sister, and she is going to talk about the kind of person that he was growing up with him.
He was always a jokester, but it didn't matter. My brother was always there for me, no matter what. I needed him, he'd be there. He helped me raise Alex when he was a baby, when his dad decided to leave us. He left me with nothing. My brother sent me money every week, every month to make sure that Alex had what he needed and what I needed. He was always there for me. Billy was a great uncle. When Austin was born, he was there when Austin was born. He'd come after work and see Austin every day. And he was always there, never missed a beat, nothing. And then when Alex was born, he wasn't there because we lived in two different states. He didn't meet Alex until I think Alex was 6 weeks old. And it was like Austin all over again. Always there, when we'd come up to visit, always playing with them. He'd come down, and when they came down to visit, he would, play with them, make funny faces, always, Billy and his favorite, sticking his tongue out and the goofy faces and stuff. He was a very good uncle.
So not only was he a good father and a good friend with his co-workers in the law enforcement field and EMS and fire, he was also a great brother and a great uncle. I know that the sibling rivalry is kind of complex and always isn't perfect. But the one theme that stands out is that regardless of what took place, my cousin Billy was always there for his sister. He did what was necessary to take care of her. He didn't have to, but he did. Because he loved his sister. Because that's the kind of guy that he was. That's the kind of guy that I hope to be someday. I am growing. I am still trying to become a better person. The grieving process has been difficult. It's still there, yet doing the podcast has definitely helped me, my family, and all of us, even first responders and the people that he's known in the field and other first responders around the country. It's helped us heal, and it brings light to a lot of things that otherwise would not have been brought light to. And unfortunately, it took one man's life for it to come to this. And it had to be my cousin. It is sad, but this is what he would wanted us to do, not to just continuously grovel and grieve over his passing, but to move forward and to honor him in a manner that would not overpraise him, but to give help to other people, to show honor to other people who are deserved of that honor, especially, our other first responders. We have a lot of law enforcement all over the country. We have a lot of firefighters all over the country. We have a lot of EMS and dispatch and corrections officers all over the country that are deserving to have honors because of what they do. They put their life at risk constantly on a day-to-day basis to do a job to save lives. You know, our dispatch are far forgotten at times, and I just want people to know that dispatch is a very integral part in the first responder world, because the calls go to them, and then from there they dispatch accordingly, whether it's fire or EMS, or whether it goes to LEO for law enforcement, sheriff's department, police department, state troopers. They also go through a lot of grief and traumas because they are constantly on the phones hearing all of this happen. They hear the shots fired. They hear the officers down. They hear the fear and the terror in the victims of crimes that are calling for help. So they deal with these kinds of things. So in remembering my cousin, we're going to remember all of our first responders. One individual that comes to mind right now, he is a friend. He is somebody who's confided in me and who trusted me to talk to me about some of the situations that he's been in. He is a retired firefighter, a volunteer firefighter. He's done it for 25 years. And my hat goes off to this man because he supports the podcast, and not just because of that. Even though he has been retired from the fire department for quite a few years, his act of bravery and his act of selflessness has not left. And I am talking about a person who has been on our podcast and who has dealt with traumas and situations that he had a hard time overcoming. And I'm speaking about Anthony. So whoever has been on the podcast and has listened to Anthony's story, I would encourage you to do that. Anthony had a very traumatic situation happen a few days ago. I would say about a week ago now. He had called me or messaged me in the middle of the night. I was asleep, and I called him back early in the morning. I didn't get a response. And so I called him back later in the day, and his wife answered. He was still sleeping. And she woke him up. She told him who was on the phone. He got up, and he talked to me about what happened. So he had somebody working on his car the day before. And this mechanic was under the car, working on the car. And Anthony was in his office doing his thing. Next thing you know, he's pounding on his window, calling for help. His car had fallen on top of the mechanic. What did Anthony do? He responded like the man I expected him to respond. As the man that I talk to and somebody that I call a friend. He put his own life at risk. He put his own health at risk. He is a much bigger man than the mechanic. So he slid his own body under this car and used his body as a flotation device to basically lift the car off of the mechanic and put the weight on himself. All the while, he was on the phone with dispatch, giving him a play-by-play while this is happening. I can't imagine the thoughts going through his head, and I know that he wished he could have done more, that he should have done something different. But I'm going to say to you, Anthony, you did exactly what Bill would have done. You done everything that you humanly possibly could have done to save this man's life. Because of you, they were able to get him out. Because of you, he was able to breathe. Because of you, he came out of that only with a few lacerations to the face, no broken ribs, no internal bleeding. Because of you, he's able to live another day. And because of that, my friend, and I know you're sore and I know you're hurting, not only physically, but mentally. But because of you, that man is alive today and he is able to see his family. He's able to talk to his family. He's still breathing. He is alive because of you. So with that being said, Anthony, I would encourage you to not beat yourself up over it. Don't overthink it. You did what you had to do. You were called to a job. You did that job. And you acted accordingly. You did exactly what Bill would have done. You did not run from danger. You ran toward it to save somebody's life. My hat's off to you, brother, and I am glad to call you my friend and brother. So today is more than a date on a calendar. June 27th is a call to remember, a call to reflect, and to recommit ourselves to living with the same dedication, compassion, and courage that Bill did. My message to Bill: we miss you, we love you, and we will always, always honor you. And we promise to keep telling your story. And we will continue to help your brothers and sisters in the first responder world, as well as in the military, whether active or retired or on reserve. So to everyone listening, thank you for helping us keep this memory alive. Share this episode, tell someone about Bill, and live in a way that would make him proud. So until next time, please stay safe and never forget what sacrifice truly means.
Wilson County Central Dispatch requesting priority radio traffic. All units, please stand by. Central 28158. Central 8158, status check, please. Central 8158, acknowledge. Deputy Sheriff William Bill Butler, badge number 8158. End of watch, Thursday, June 27, 2024. Deputy Butler was shot and killed while assisting another deputy during a traffic stop. Attempted arrest of a subject with outstanding warrants. During the struggle, the subject pulled a gun, shooting Deputy Butler. He gave his life serving this community with courage and valor. The men and women of Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department are forever grateful and proud to have served with Deputy Butler. We should never forget his ultimate sacrifice. Deputy Butler is now secured from his tour of duty. He leaves behind a loving family, a grateful community. He may be gone, but he'll never be forgotten. Deputy Butler, rest in peace, sir. Rest in peace. Hillsborough County Central Dispatch, clear priority traffic, July 3rd, 2024.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who serve, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.